Okay, everybody, second installment here. This is another one of the IXL exercises, right? The one that asks you to factor out a monomial. So I have 4 examples here. I'll spend a minute or two on each one again. So it says to factor out the greatest common factor. It says if the GCF is just 1, then simply retype the polynomial. So I didn't pick one of those examples, but they do happen. If you can't divide anything out of both terms, then they just want you to just retype the original. So I don't have that example on here. I have ones that we can factor out the GCF, right? So in this first example here, I'm not going to do this for all of them, but I'll do it for the first. 8n cubed is really 8 times n minus 10n squared, which is minus 10 times n. So I want to start off with the coefficients. So what number can I divide, the highest number can I divide into 8 and 10? Well, in this case, yes, it's only 2. So if I divide out the GCF, the numeric GCF, it's just 2. Now, I have 3 n's in one term, 2 in the other. What's the most amount, the same amount, that I can take out of both? Well, I can't take out 3 n's from here and here because this one doesn't have enough. So what I'm going to do is take out 2 n's. Now, n times n is n squared. So I'm just going to write it out like this first, okay? And then we'll simplify in a second. So I've divided 8 by 2, which leaves 4. I've taken out n squared. I've taken out 2 n's, which only leaves 1. And then on the other hand here, minus, I'll keep my symbol the same. 10 divided by 2 is 5, but I've divided out both n's already, so that leaves none. However, you should not type this in as you see it. On IXL, they're going to ask you to write the simplified answer, which would be 10n squared, right? In the parentheses would be 4n minus 5, and that would be your final solution. I actually made a mistake the first time I tried these questions because I only typed in the greatest common factor. That was wrong. That was like what we did in the previous video on the other example. This, you have to write out your GCF on the outside and the remaining polynomial here. I'm not going to do this for the others, but I just do it for this first example. If I want to check my work, ready? 2n squared times 4n. Well, 2 times 4 gives me 8. N times n gives me n cubed. And then if I multiply times negative 5, 2 times negative 5 is negative 10, and then n squared. Alrighty, so I'm going to pick up the pace on these last 3, but really it's the same thing over and over again, ladies and gentlemen. So first and foremost, what is the greatest common factor of 14 and 35? Well, that's going to be 7, right? So I'm going to divide 7 out in front. What is the most amount of x's I can take out of the same amount from each? Well, that's just going to be 1. So if I divide out 7x, let's think about what remains. 14 divided by 7 is 2, or 7 times 2 brings me back to 14. Now, if I divided 1x out of x squared, that leaves 1x, or x times x brings me back to x squared. I'm going to keep my symbol the same. 35 divided by 7 is 5, right? Or 7 times 5 is 35. And I've divided out the only x that's there. 7x times negative 5 is negative 35x. We're done. Okay, that would be how you type it in on IXL. Okay, last 2 examples here. So 18 and 15. So, the highest number I could divide into both is only going to be 3. Okay, now, what's the most amount of p's that I could take out of, or factor out, or divide out of each of these terms? Well, it's going to be 2. I could divide out p squared, or p to the second, and I can also take out 2 of the p's here. So what I'm going to do is factor out 3p squared, all right? 3 times what gives me 18? Well, that's 6. P squared times how many more p's give me p to the 4th? Well, it's going to be another p squared, all right? Or another way to think about that is I divided out 2 of them, leaving 2 still there. All right, next, 15 divided by 3 is 5, or 3 times what brings me back to 15? And I've divided out both p's, right? I've divided out p squared, so we are finished. That's your answer. That's exactly how you type it in on IXL. Finally, we get over here. Let me look at my numeric terms, my coefficient. What's the greatest common factor? Well, I really don't have one other than 1. Now, I will write the 1 out here, but I'm going to get rid of that in the end. So let's see. How many y's? What's the greatest number of y's I can take out of both of them? Well, that's going to be y squared again. I could take 2 out of here. So 1 times what gives me 3? Well, that's going to be 3, right? I'm just really left with the same numbers. And if I divide out y squared, if I factor out y squared, if I take out 2 of the y's, that's going to leave 2 of the y's there. All right, 1 times what gives me positive 5? Well, that's just 5. And I've divided out y squared. I've divided out both y's, leaving none there. So I'm going to just rewrite this as y squared times 3y squared plus 5. Okay? Each of these is your final answer, and that's how you type it into IXL. Hope it helps. Talk to you guys later.